Hello.
Are you pregnant?
I am pregnant, yes. I am so excited to be here tonight and have so much gratitude and so honored, and thank you so much to Kelly and all the organizers and all of you for coming tonight. And I will try not to interrupt the event by going into labor this evening. I don't think I'm in too much danger of that. But this story is called Baby on Board. Appropriate? It's 8 o'clock at night, and our baby is screaming. Not hungry, tired, or lonely cries. Actual gut-wrenching, something is not right. Mom and Dad figured out fast yowls. This isn't normal. He's in pain, I tell my husband, and he doesn't disagree. We need to take him to a doctor, he replies. We both have first aid training, but the cause of our baby's distress is eluding us. We know we need more help, but instead of leaping into action, we freeze and look at each other. We are on a sailboat, on anchor, in a foreign country in the middle of the night. Well, let's get in the dinghy and figure it out as we go, I say. Our vehicle to get to shore is a sturdy, rigid-hold inflatable with an 8-horse outboard. For security, we haul it up at night, out of the water with the engine attached. It only takes my husband a minute or two to splash it into the water, and I'm right on his heels with the baby in my arms. As we speed through the anchorage towards land 5 minutes away, I'm filled with dread, and more than a few past naysayer remarks rise up to haunt me. Really? You're taking your tiny baby to live on a boat in Mexico? Is that safe or smart? What if he falls overboard? What if he gets sick? What if he hates it? What if, what if, what if? This litany of questions usually wrapped up with, well, you guys are brave, I could never do that, which seemed to translate to, you're crazy and also bad parents. But there's more to the story. I was a boat baby. I grew up on an island in Alaska until the age of 4, when my mom and I first moved to Port Townsend. After that, we went back and forth between Washington and Alaska, and I attended school in both states and spent part of every summer hand trolling on my dad's commercial fishing boat, the Corvus. Boats were the backdrop to my entire childhood. At 6 weeks old, my parents took me by skiff to their oyster farm, which was at least 3 hours from any signs of civilization. By 2 months, I was riding in the bow of their kayak, and by the time I was 1, I had earned the nickname Little Merc because of my mean impression of a Mercury outboard. I could fall asleep in a pile of survival suits even when our skiff was pounding through waves, and I received my first kayak paddle at age 2. It was deluxe, a broomstick with half a Clorox bottle duct taped to each end. The smell of diesel still invokes so many fond memories of walking on docks, and a whiff of outboard exhaust always triggers a sense of anticipation. Adventure awaits. So of course I wanted to raise my own kids on and around boats. The life lessons, the empowerment, the freedom. Thank goodness I met and married a waterman who felt the same way. But his childhood consisted of messing about on sailboats, of which I knew very little, except they were slow, tippy, and seemed to demand a higher level of cleanliness than powerboats. Some even required you to wear special shoes on deck. It wasn't until I went to work on the schooner Adventurous that I learned a sailboat can be as powerful a workhorse as a motorboat in its own way. I also learned how to sail, which proved very useful when my husband and I decided to sail down the coast of North America and see where we ended up. That was 6 years ago. We ended up on the west coast of Mexico, and that became our cruising grounds for half of every year. In the summers, we worked boat jobs in the States, and that funded our Mexican playtime in the winter. When we found that I was pregnant a few years into this extremely agreeable arrangement, at first we panicked. Would we have to sell the boat and get corporate jobs in a city somewhere? Wear colored shirts and tight shoes and talk in a foreign language of sales quotas and quarterly targets? That option made us both ill, but we wanted to be responsible parents. Was that the only way to raise a family? We reflected back on our childhood boating adventures and all the unconventional families we had met in our travels and decided, heck no! As long as we could provide a safe, loving, and stable home for our child, why not try it on a boat? After all, happy parents tend to raise happy kids, and nothing made us happier than the thought of our little baby living aboard with us in their very own teeny tiny life jacket. So, we told the world our plans, and the world responded with acres of unsolicited advice and a healthy dose of skepticism. Fortunately, none of it came from our parents or closest friends. They had all seen our boat, knew our priorities, and were on board. We decided not to plan any big sailing trips the first season or two, and just enjoy living on anchor off the small town of La Cruz in the beautiful and heavily amenitied Banderas Bay. Certainly other families had attempted much more thrilling baby boat adventures. We just wanted to float around with our little family and see how it went. Turned out it was lovely. If you've ever met a baby, you know they like to sleep, eat, be rocked gently, and have smiling people coo at them. We had all of that in boatloads. Our days on anchor were slow and tranquil, centered around our child's loose nap schedule and the various boat chores we needed to complete, like engine maintenance and washing cloth diapers. Our son's favorite non-nursing activity was lying in the forward berth under our big open hatch, listening to the seabirds and watching the clouds scuttle past. Mexico, or at least the small town we were anchored off of, turned out to be a wonderful place to have a baby. We learned so much watching the local families raising their kids with lots of love and very little helicoptering, and everywhere we went, they smiled and cooed at our son. Our Spanish improved as we engaged more fully in the community, and having a baby opened doors socially and culturally in ways we hadn't anticipated. We were elated. He was happy, he was safe, he hadn't fallen overboard once, he was thriving. What had all those doubters been talking about? And then the screaming began, and the panicking, and it all started to look a lot less rosy. As we speed towards land, where we desperately hope to find a taxi to take us to the hospital 20 minutes away, our son continues to holler. He is snug against my chest in his PFD and the baby carrier, and I have my arms wrapped around him, caressing his hair and speaking as soothingly as I can into his ear. Hey, sweetie, it's okay. Mama and Papa are here. We got you. We're going to make it better. The whole time I'm wondering if this is true. Will he be okay? Can we make it better? Which leads to a deeper place of uncertainty. Have we made the right decisions that led us to this point? Are Mama and Papa actually being selfish by wanting to continue this boat-based lifestyle? Who benefits the most from growing up on boats, the kids or the parents? Who suffers? I wonder if my own parents grappled with these questions. If so, they never let on. We have to talk loudly to be heard over our son's squalls and the outboard engine. Just as my husband pulls out our local cell phone to start calling friends who could give us a lift, I feel some rumbling vibrations against my chest. Abruptly, our son's screams cease. He looks up with a tear-streaked face and gives me a crooked smile. What just happened? My husband asks in confusion. Oh my God, I reply. I think it was just gas. Again, we freeze and stare at each other. And then when our son gives a little giggle, we begin to laugh too. We cut the engine and drift near the dinghy dock, waiting to see if this situation could really have resolved itself so quickly and neatly. All signs of pain are gone, and our son is completely transformed back to his mellow, happy self. Wow, all that fearful fuss over some indigestion. We start up the engine and head back to our boat. But we don't go to bed that night until we've laid out a game plan for if or when something like this happens again. The next day, we gather all the phone numbers for the local taxis, clinics, hospitals, and ambulance companies into one place and enter them into our phones. We also ask around for a recommended pediatrician and make an appointment to establish care in case we have less urgent medical questions in the future. We already have my mom, an RN, and our stateside doctor on speed dial, but this trial run has reminded us we need to have more local safety nets in place. When I finally fall asleep that night, with my baby dozing contentedly at my breast, I feel a huge surge of relief and a jumble of emotions. Before we left to go cruising, we participated in multiple Coast Guard-approved safety and survival at sea courses, and renewed our wilderness first aid and CPR training. We know personally the boat Rebel Heart that had to request rescue at sea 900 miles offshore when their baby got sick, and that possibility is one reason we've decided to hang near shore. We don't take our family's security lightly, and yet this incident has brought up other nagging thoughts. Are we raising a boat baby out of belief it is the best upbringing for our child, or to serve our own pride and ego? To give them unparalleled life experiences, or just to prove we're different from the mainstream? I decided that night that I will regularly check in to evaluate my motives for boat living with kids. I hope I can sift through the risks and the benefits, and together with my partner, choose what's best for all of us. I let this silent commitment settle into my head and heart, and then I lean over and kiss my husband goodnight. Before long, I am fast asleep, lulled by the rocking of our boat, the love in our little berth, and the waves of gratitude I feel for the boat childhood I had and the salty childhood that awaits our son.